Hi, I'm Archie Walkton. Welcome back to part 2 of how to make a round birch bark basket tutorial. In today's video, I'll be showing you how to put the raffia and the bamboo around the top of the basket, and then we'll be doing another cedar braid that will go around the center of the basket. What we're going to need today is our bamboo, raffia, needle, clothespin, scissors, and our cedar for our cedar braid. We are going to start by picking up a piece of raffia. I go to one end, and I'm going to thread this through the eye of my needle. I like to clean it up a little bit before I do that. Pull it through. I sort of bend it down and stick it to itself. I go to the other end. I tie a knot, 1 knot, 2 knots, leaving about 8 inches of excess. Now, what I do is I pick up my basket. You can go through any hole. It doesn't matter. You could start at the seam, or you could go any hole along the side. I pull my raffia through from the inside, and then I bring it around to the same hole I just pulled it through, and I put the needle through, and I pull it through again to create a loop. Now what I do is I put my basket down, I pick my my bamboo up, and I like to sort of squash down my bamboo. It just makes it more easier to work with. Put it in place, and then I pull the loop tight, and it should hold the bamboo in place. And what I'll do is I'm going to go through the hole one more time that I just went through. So for a third time. Until I have my nice triangle, my V. I pull the raffia over, hold it down with this finger, and I go through the next hole. I pull it through. And then I go through again for a second time. Pull it through. And then I go to my next hole. So I'm doing about 2 times. You can go 3 if you want. I go through the next hole. I pull it through. I bend it over, and I hold it in place with this finger. I go through the same hole for a second time, through the inside. Pull it out. And then I hold it in place. And then I go through the next hole, trying to carry over the same pattern. It's twice. I'm going to go 3 times on this hole because the spaces are sort of farther apart, just to sort of fill it up more, because I don't want any gaps. Over top, through the hole, first, second time. And I'm thinking about going through this hole for a third time, once again to fill it up. Go through the next hole. Pull it through. So we're just going to continue going through the holes along the perimeter, going through 2 to 3 times. It's entirely up to you. So we've come to the end of our raffia. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my needle. Now I have a bit of excess here, which is what I want, about 8 inches. I go through, I pull my needle down, like so. Pull it tight, not too tight, you don't want to crack the birch. And then I tie a knot. So I've tied my knot, just sort of cleaning it up. I cut the raffia off. I'm going to go over here and just cut some of this excess raffia off as well. Now, I know that I have this distance to go, so I bend the bamboo like this. And I take my clothespin to hold this in place. And then I cut off some of the excess so it doesn't get in the way when I'm working on the basket around the perimeter. So we grab another piece of raffia. I go to the end. I put it through the eye of my needle. So stick it to itself. Sometimes there's some extras hanging off. I cut them off. I go to the other end. I tie my knot. I usually go for about 8 inches of excess, just in case I need it. I do another knot. So 2 knots. Nice and tight. So I have my raffia on. I go through the next hole. Pull it over. We want our beautiful V shape. I'm going about 3 times. I thought originally I'd be going through the hole about 2 times, but 3 seems to be the lucky number. So we get our nice V. Go through the next hole. Now we'll just continue on. So I've grabbed a new piece of raffia because I ran out of raffia again. So I put it through the eye of the needle, tied a knot in the end, and now I'm continuing to do my stitching as I'm nearing the end. Now you'll notice that I'm still getting my nice V shapes going around the basket. Now when you come to the seam, you go through the holes of the seam the same way that you would go through any of the other holes. You just bring your needle around. Now we got one more hole left. I could tell there's a big gap here. So I Basically, I cut the bamboo down to about here because I know that it's gonna go and end exactly right where the raffia starts here. I bring my needle around through the inside, pull it through. This is the second time I pulled it through. Now there's still a gap. I go in for a third time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the next hole. Like this. Just to fill that gap. Like that. I'll go through one more time. Now I'm going to bring the raffia over, holding with this finger. I go underneath the raffia on the inside of the basket and I pull it through. Try to make it nice and tight. Pop my needle off, tie my knot. And then I just pull the knot really tight, like so. And then I cut my excess raffia off. And then I cut more of the excess raffia off. Now I like to go around the inside of the basket to trim it up a little bit to make it look nice and pretty. I don't always like big pieces sticking out. There. So we're done the top raffia and bamboo perimeter of our basket. At this point, we are going to be making our cedar braid for the middle section of our basket. I've soaked 5 strands of cedar in room temperature water for about 15 to 20 minutes. Now, I've grabbed all 5 pieces. I put them together at the end. I've tied a piece of sinew around it. And then I tied a knot. Now I did about 2 knots. Now I'm going to cut the extra bit off. And now we're going to start braiding. So we're going to start with the piece on the closest to my right hand side. That's the farthest out. I'm going to bring the piece down to the middle between the 4 pieces, like this. And then I'm going to do the same on my left hand side. I'm going to bring this down. And then I'm going to bring this down in between the 4. I'm going to bring this on the farthest side down in between the 4. I'm going to bring this farthest piece down in between the 4 and carry that pattern on down. And as you can see, our braid is starting to come alive. Now we've come to the end of our braid. I take a small piece of sinew and I wrap it around. Holding my braid in place. And I tie a knot on the end. I do 1 knot, and then I go 2 knots, and then I go 3 knots for good luck. Now what I like to do is I'll go to the end and I'll just even it out, cut around, and then I go to the other end and I do the same. And then I take my braid and I wrap it around the basket. And I overlap it. Now that tells me where I'm going to need to go in and knot it with sinew and a needle. Now I take my cedar braid off my basket because I know where it's going to line up at the back. I grab a piece of sinew. I go to one end. I thread it through the eye of my needle. Now you don't need a really big piece of sinew. Just a small piece. And I tie a knot, leaving a bit of excess, probably about 1 inch. I grab my braid and I go through it and I try to create my X. So go down, and now I'm going to go up through another side here. And then down through the other side and pull it through. And then I'm going to take the sinew off my needle. I'm going to tie a knot just to secure it. 1 knot, 2 knot, 3 knot for good luck. I cut the excess off. Now you notice there's some bits hanging off. I trim up my braid a bit. And now it's time to put it on my basket. So I put it on the top. Now I like to put the braid on the basket sometimes wet because it's easier to put it on the basket when it's wet. And I put it down and just let it dry in place on the basket. And now we are done our round birch bark basket. Now that we're done making our round birch bark basket, what we can do is that we can put crystals, stones, and medicine in our birch bark basket. What I like to do is I like to put cedar flowers in my birch bark basket. and then I like to leave it out. I hope you enjoyed making this round birch bark basket with me. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next tutorial video.